So is there anybody here not from the Drupal community? So any API folks? So I've done a lot of work trying to make a talk that would fit both the Drupal community and the API community. So yeah, well, I hope it works for you all. But yeah, so I'll be talking about the things that, well, some of the things that I've learned over the last 10 years building developer portals for large enterprise companies in Drupal. And then some new things that came up, like when I was preparing for this talk, like thinking through like how do I tell this story? And there's some interesting, or at least for me, interesting insights that I hope you'll also like. So the subtitle does a lot of heavy lifting in this talk, like the what is the best way to publish API documentation? Now I think the insights are generally applicable, but that is the example that I'll be working from. So let's talk about developer portals. Who here knows what is a developer portal? Okay, so for those that don't know, developer portals is like a really important ingredient of any API program or API management program that a large enterprise company might be running, or smaller companies also. It's a tool for publishing their API documentation so that developers would be able to do stuff with it. Now, there's different types of developer portals. It's not only about APIs. There's also other types of documentation portals that get the label of developer portal, but that is like that's the biggest market right now out there. So we've been building developer portals in Drupal for the past 10 years. Now, I've got this slide here with my favorite, or one of my favorite bands. One of the things that you learn when you build documentation sites is that it's never enough. Because no matter what you do, it's never enough. Because people don't like writing documentation. People don't like reading documentation, even though that is like really, really, really important. And if you're doing this for developers, it gets even worse because they think that they can do it better than whatever is already out there. Especially in the enterprise. So then, the first question I want to start this talk with is this talk, like what technology should you choose? This is a very common question that people often ask in this scene, and they often tend to change their ideas about what technology to choose. So as already said, we've been building these in Drupal, but static site generators that were a little bit in, like an earlier talk were mentioned, Markdown, APIs, clouds, and headless setups. Like several big banks have built portals like this in the recent past that I know of. Backstage, I don't think anybody here knows about this. This is an internal developer portal tool built by Spotify. It's an open source tool. It's very popular in the CNCF community. Docusaurus is kind of popular, which is something that's Facebook built. Mintlify is one of the sponsors here. They just became a rainbow pony. Like they got a valuation of $500 million. So it's not a unicorn, but a pony. I don't know if you. Yeah. But like for a documentation platform, that's a big deal, right? I've heard people say, why do we even need documentation portals? Like, we can just have an MCP registry, and then people can just talk to the MCP server, and it will just do stuff for them. Like, that's another technology choice I've heard recently. Or why do we even need to publish stuff? We've got GitHub, we've got Markdown in GitHub. The AI will get it out of there, and it's going to be great. And then the last one is like, we could just vibe something together. And now, I think this is the wrong question. So now I'll talk a little bit about some insights about technology choice. Ultimately, it comes back to Drupal is awesome, but I'll get there. So very short word about myself. So I'm the CEO of Pronovix. We're a consultancy specialized in developer portals, as I already said. We've done, like, the first 10 years of our business, we were very active in the Drupal community. The last 10 years, we've basically been doing a lot of community stuff outside of the Drupal community, a lot in this community, in the API Days community and a couple of others, technical writing and so on and so on. If you ever want to learn how to build developer portals, we got a whole bunch of blog posts, podcasts, we've got an award for the dev portals scene, all of that stuff we can find in our websites. But back to the story. Another question you could ask is, especially now that people are asking, is how can we generate documentation with AI? And that sometimes people think about this in a sort of Seven Samurai story, like where there's like a small team that gets this impossible mission of trying to solve the problems of the whole organization. Or sometimes it's just like everybody's told to go and generate docs automatically with AI, because now, AI can do that, right, for you, right? But both of them are also, again, recipes for tragedies. Another question you could ask is, how can I unify docs? Because this is another big problem that in this space happens often, is that when you have a large enough organization, you have a lot of developers that are doing things in lots of different technologies, and that means that there's lots of different tool chains. And then you have I'm blanking on the names now, but a whole lot of historical things like restructured text and ASCII doc and blah, 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 a whole bunch of different tool chains. And then organizations have this problem that in a worst case, there's no place where those docs get published. Or maybe slightly better, you have like fragmented documentation with like different portals for each of these technologies, and you have to like know who to ask where you can find the documentation. Or you end up with a Franken-site where those documentations get like put together in something that does not look like it's one thing, but it is together, so it's already slightly better. But now AI lets you brute force this and to create coherence between all of these amalgamations of different pieces, and to create something that looks like it's kind of streamlined, and that you can streamline the outputs. But you can, if you really stare at it long enough, you can see that it's really like a shape-shifted documentation portal, because you'll see that there's inconsistencies or that it doesn't really all fit together. Now, this is a missed opportunity, because documentation and the APIs that you're documenting in a developer portal are tools for changing your organization. And now, especially with AI, and the APIs are an essential ingredient for automating things deterministically with AI. So like, you can vibe all day long, but if you want things to be predictable and actually quality controllable, it's better to work with a constraint system like APIs. And portals help you to manage these changes. But then, if none of these, now what can you do? How does AI change documentation? And this is something I worked a long time on this story, because I was trying to show you a really cool story that I've seen at FOSDEM earlier this year. Even Rusakas from Apache Supersets did this talk on the Tool-to-Docs track about how they're using Docusaurus to use AI to generate documentation. But it's not just generate. He did something very specific that I was like chewing on, like, what is it now that was so interesting? And it gives an interesting insight that I think is relevant to all of us in the Drupal community. And I was thinking about, like, how can I show these two examples, like an example in Docusaurus, like with a static site generator, and then something in Drupal. And as I was chewing on this and chewing on this and chewing on this, I came to this understanding. But first, show you an example. So what he was showing, and this is just one example, he showed a couple of different examples. He was showing how they had this whole big set of documentation that people were like doing a lot of work, maintaining, writing, and so on. But it was, in the end result was this, it's not that good. Because it was like this hodgepodge of different things, and people with opinions doing interesting things. That might ring a bell in the Drupal community. And what he did was he took this existing documentation and he went upstream into the code and changed the source using AI, really enriched the initial documentation so that now when somebody was doing a change on the code, they were had like something, a template to continue working on top of that was going to end up in much better end result because he was like adding a lot of metadata and creating more structure upstream. So in the documentation world, this is called Doxus code. I don't know, have you heard of this, Doxus code? Some people? Yeah? So when we're talking about doing markdown documentation, markdown content, I'm thinking Doxus code because this is huge in the documentation world. Technical writers, like there's two big schools that I see. One is Doxus code, which is in a Git repository, go upstream and like put the documentation with the codes so you always have up-to-date documentation. The other stream is like minimalism and like DITA and XML and semantic markup. Got a whole spiel about that. That's for another talk. But this is what's happening there. Now, I hadn't realized the value of AI in a Doxus code process until I really started thinking about what was going on here. Because the end result, after augmenting the upstream stuff with all this metadata, was that he was able to generate this beautiful documentation using the static site generator, using Docusaurus. And so what I realized was that basically what he was doing is he was using AI to catalyze the transformation. So not to create documentation, not to improve the documentation necessarily. He was changing the process, creating a new template to start from that's fundamentally transformed how the whole organization worked. So this is this idea of shift left, if you know that, if you're familiar with that idea of in the platform world, people talk about that. Doxus code is a shift left play where you're creating a platform motion that is reducing the downstream work by bringing some of the work upstream and doing things with it. But as I was thinking about this, I started thinking about ETL. And another one, who knows what is ETL? Some? Okay. So I don't know, do we talk about that in Drupal as what we're doing? No, right? But this is normally what, in the data community, it's extract, transform, load. It's a way of taking information from where you have it, transforming it so that you can then load it into a system. But you transform it before you load it into the system. Does that ring a bell? It's kind of like what we're doing in Drupal, right? Like when you're bringing content into a system, or at least unless people are authoring in your tool, this is kind of like what we have to do because we have the structured model that requires us to do this transformation to bring the content in. So I would argue, and it is a little bit abstract, but I would argue that what we do in the CMS world is ETL. Now, in the data world, they've gone beyond ETL. They're doing extract, load, transform, which is saying like the transformation we're not going to do before we load. We're just going to dump everything we have into this data lake, and then we'll just pull out stuff as we go. Does that ring a bell? It's kind of like what we're doing with RAG, or like what people are nowadays doing with RAG. It's just whatever content you have, you chunk it up, throw it into the pool, and hope that works, right? Now, what you're doing with Doxus code is transform, extract, load. You do the transformation way in the beginning before you even start extracting the information. Transform, and it's a little bit meta, but you transform the source so that the extraction is going to become much easier and more deterministic, and then you load it into the system to then generate your output. And now comes to my last question, like, do we then still need, like with these interesting things like this, just ask the RAG to tell your documentation, do you still need a CMS? With the ability to do this Doxus code stuff, like I get this question a lot, do you still need a CMS? And I think there are definitely really important use cases where CMSs can play a really important role. Because if you look at extract, transform, load, you can put a transform at the beginning. You can do Doxus codes and bring it into a CMS. You can do both. You can also tack on AI at the end and add contextualized transformation on top of the things that you've generated. And so it gets E3TL, and I wanted to do a Star Wars joke here, but Disney had other ideas, so I ended up with a closet on wheels and a sad robot. But what I think we can do with Drupal is transform the input, transform the output with the structured content model, and also still transform at the end with the context. And this is, I think, what Drupal AI enables. And this is, I really wanted to bring this message to non-Drupal folks, but I hope it's also useful to you. And this enables 3 last things, and then I'll wrap up. Well, I always like thinking, like, what's next, and kind of philosophizing. You can probably tell from my talk. And there's 3 interesting things that I see on the horizon. So first is what I call the third context. If you're familiar with third space, you know the concept of a third space? Yeah, like, you know, it's not owned by you, but it's like where you can go and meet other people, that kind of stuff. It's like really important for social cohesion. So I think Drupal is kind of like a third space for the open web. Because, and actually in the AI world, where there's a lot of personal AI harnesses, like there's AI tools for you, that exists. There's AI tools for your company, but there's no AI tools for third spaces yet. And I think Drupal can play that role of a third space or a third space AI harness where you can bring companies, communities, partners together to do interesting things with AI. And this is where, I was really excited about the Kristen's talk, but this is, I think, where the Context Control Center can play a really interesting role, like bringing those new things, the skill concepts into a third space. Very interesting, like a lot of possibilities here. Second thing is what I call agentic experience platform. I think, it's again like big words and then figure out what they mean, but Drupal has for a very long time and spearheaded by some of the largest contributors in our community been a digital experience platform. I think that now with the Drupal AI module, Drupal can become an agentic experience platform. What that means, we still need to figure it out, but I think it means at least 2 things. One is a place where, like an AI harness, where agentic tools can do interesting things for a specific niche market, but also a tool for publishing documentation so that third-party AI can do interesting things with your content. Yeah? And this is something that Drupal is really good at. Because when we've been doing a research this quarter about developer portals in banks. Yep. Developer portals in banks. And what we found was that the Drupal sites, and not because they were ours, but also other people's Drupal sites, they were performing better on AI visibility than a lot of the JavaScript sites and the other sites that people had been building. Because we have all this metadata and we've got all this structure and so on, that there was semantically meaningfully marked up information that was helping with visibility. And then the last one, the third one, is something that I'm super excited about since like a couple of weeks, AI native services. And this, lots of buzzwords here, right? AI native services and Centauric workflows. So Centauric workflows, you know Centaur? Have you heard of this concept? Some people. This comes from the chess world. There's chess games where centaurs play against each other. And centaurs are mixtures of computers and humans working together as a unit. So centauric workflows for me are workflows where you have computer systems and humans delivering a service together. So AI native services for me is not about doing everything with AI. It's about doing 80% with AI and 20%, that's like the most valuable, with people, so that the results are actually good and that, like, you know, you can count on it and change a business. So then I was reading this playbook, which is actually from Emergence Capital, which is actually meant for SaaS companies. So for the founders amongst us, go and check this out. If you can come to Cambridge, Massachusetts in 2 weeks from now to Drupal Pivot, because this is one of the topics that I want to talk about. Because it's not only the Drupal agencies that are having trouble right now. SaaS companies also have trouble. The way that they're trying to solve their problems is by breaking this golden rule of products that they've been playing by for a very long time, which was you don't do services, you don't do consulting. Like SaaS products, the whole idea was you build a tool and then people have to use it and do something with it and then pay per seats to be able to get access to your tool. That is going out of the window now because people don't really want to pay per seat and there's a bunch of other stuff. So now they started looking at how can you, instead of giving people the tool that they still have to hire someone to do the job to get the value, how can you actually just deliver the value? Have the tool and maybe some people to actually deliver the value. And I think this could be a really fertile ground for our community to pivot away from only delivering systems, but to build systems and then have the AI augmented service or human augmented AI services that go with it to deliver the value for our customers. And that's the end of my talk. I hope it sparked some ideas. This is my LinkedIn. Connect with me, chat with me. Always happy to think further. And if you can come to the events in 2 weeks from now, Dries is going to be there, a bunch of other people, and yeah, well, we can work together on the future of the Drupal community. Because I think the Drupal community without agencies is not the Drupal community.